So this is how you emit an event. Now, if you could remember, we have installed special thing called user event. What exactly does this user event do? Well, I gave you an introduction about it. It allows us to mimic just like how user event has been called, right? How the user types actually in that particular element itself. So I'm just going to import that as well. Yeah, it would be import user event from at testing library of user event. All right. So now what I'm going to do is, instead of this fire event, I'm just going to call that user event. By the way, user event is not synchronous. In other words, it takes some time to type, right? The typing speed varies from person to person, correct? So it's obviously not synchronous. So you need to use the asynchronous function of await user event dot. You can either click it, you can either double click it, you can type it, and you can even select some options. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to type something, and then I'm going to get the element, the target element. The target element is going to be the same. So I'll just copy here. Then the second value would be the string itself. So let me have hi there peeps. So this is even more simplified. Could you see from this particular thing? This user event is even more simplified. And as you can see, it still has the value of hi there peeps. So now the next topic what I want to talk about is, till now we didn't check for any prop handlers, correct? We were having everything inside here itself. But what if we have some prop handlers? Like let's say we have some sort of functions as callbacks or something like that. So what we can do is we can have, like let's say we have a button inside the search text, or let's say we have, let's have a button itself. We'll have a button called click me. All right, let's have a button called click me, and then when this gets clicked, I'm going to pass a prop inside here with the help of app.js. I'm just going to say do something. Right? Do something, and it would just print out console log. That's it. Console log done something. Right? So now I'm going to call this function as a prop inside my search function. So I'll just say this dot props dot do something. All right. Let me just quit this text just here. All right. So let me come back here, and when I click on this button, it should call the do something, and all I have to do is just make sure that this particular function gets called, this particular thing. So let me just check it normally inside my particular React app. Then if I click here, you could see the function gets called. Now the thing is, since this function is available in our real world and not in our testing world, how do we get this function? How do we import this function? Now, clearly, you can import your function as an export by having here like function, do something, and then you can simply have console log of hi there, as well as you can make sure that you are exporting this function, and then you can simply have your do something here. That will still work. You can obviously you can come here and go inside the search.test.jx, and then you can import that. But why all those messy things to do when we have an alternative? What is that alternative? Well, the test framework just gives us a functionality called mocking. Mocking is a very huge, how would I say, attribute to testing itself. Let me give you an example. Let's say that we have an application which is wired to a payment gateway. Okay. The payment gateway allows us to charge payments based on our order value. If we buy some shirts, pants or something, it amounts to like certain XYZ rupees, and we are presenting ourselves to the payment gateway. Now the thing is, if we want to mimic that process with the help of the testing library, would we rather hit the API again and again and again? the real world API? Doesn't that sound too obvious or doesn't that sound too weird to you guys? Because if we are hitting the real world APIs, one, they might rate limit us, just like YouTube. Or two, we might get charged by a real card. Or three, more worse things could happen. Like let's say if your API is unstable, if they have messed it up, if they have some issues, you are not responsible, right? You are not responsible because your code would be correct. They have some errors in their code. So these three uncertainties will happen if you want to test the code. So normally what could you do? You can either wait for them to fix the bugs or you can yourself mark that functionality. Did you understand what I just said? You can yourself mark that particular functionality whenever that API request comes into play. So instead of connecting to the real payment gateway, what we can do is we can ourselves decide that two things should happen. If you get a proper response, you need to render this, or you need to render the other thing. So you can literally just go through the two use cases. Again, we will see that with the help of a small API fetching thing, and then we will do that. Don't worry about that. We will do that. The thing, what I'm trying to say is, you don't have to rely on the real world functions that is happening here. What your functionality or what your job as a tester to do is, you need to check whether the particular prop has been called or not. That is literally it. Okay. So how do we do that? Well, there is a particular method called just.function. Just.function allows you to mock for a certain functionality, and then whenever you are rendering that component inside here and then calling that component, it will instead take the mocked function instead of the original function. So did you understand what I just said? Instead of the original function, it will take the mocked function for the example. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, it is super easy. All we have to call is make sure that we have the prop of, like, let's say I have the particular test once again. Oh, sorry, it should not, I shouldn't have commented it. I should have another test of trigger a prop call by clicking, because that is exactly what we are going to do, right? Let this be async itself because we might have some async availabilities. So what I'll do is I'll just render once again. But here, instead of my particular do something original function, I will be, like, let me have it near app.js itself so that it will be easy for me to show you. Instead of having the original function, what I'll do is I'll just have const dummy original function is equal to just.function, right? This just.function allows us to mimic the original function, and now all I have to do is I can say do something is equal to dummy original name. Did you get it, people? Were you able to understand this? So what I'm doing now is, instead of passing the original function, I am basically checking for my own function. So what my goal is to check whether this function has been called or not inside my original component. So what I'm doing is, when I'm clicking it, I am calling this do something function, right? I don't care about the value of the function. What I do care about is whether if that function has been called or not. And that is the reason why I'm mimicking this function. Let me just run this first and show you that this works, okay? So that it will be easy for me as well. So now what I'm going to do is I'll just have a click functionality. Okay, I will get the same query by, so what I'll do is I'll just have a test ID inside my button so that it will be even easy for me. Data test ID would be clicker, right? The name would be clicker because, as you can see, I'm just going to have the clicker here. So let me just come back here and then say get by test ID, because I'm going to get it. I'm not just going to query it, because I'm perfectly sure that that exists. Okay, because I was the one who wrote it.